What do you mean we're down another server? Sterling Hamilton kept his voice low, but the frustration cracked through. He stood near the back of the restaurant in a cheap polo and black slacks, pretending to check the schedule on the wall. His real name and real title would have had the manager scrambling, but today, he was just Ryan, a new trainee. This was location 12 of the 16 his late father had left him. A casual dining chain spread across 4 states. Sterling had inherited the company 2 years ago, but had mostly stayed in the upper floors of the headquarters, surrounded by district reports and filtered updates. Lately, though, something felt off. Complaints had ticked up. Employee turnover at this location was unusually high. So, he decided to stop relying on filter reports and start seeing things with his own eyes. He'd never been to this location in person. With over 100 employees total, it wasn't strange that no one recognized him. He wore thick glasses, had grown out some scruff, and dyed his hair a dull brown. Even his posture was different, shoulders rounded, gaze unsure. It worked. Yeah, Maddie called out again, said Jordan, the shift manager, walking past him. It's her 3rd no-show this month. Honestly, I'm just done. She okay? Sterling asked, playing the part. Jordan shrugged. I dunno, man. Not my problem. We'll manage. We always do. Sterling raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He followed Jordan out to the floor. The place was already packed, and the tension rolled off the staff like steam. One server in particular caught his eye, a tall guy in his 30s, thin but fast, juggling 4 tables at once. He wore a fraying apron, and even from across the room, Sterling could see the sweat down his back. Who's that? Sterling asked one of the other servers during a lull. That's Elias, she said, pouring drinks. Guy's a machine. Works doubles almost every day. Probably sleeps in his car. Why? She shrugged. He doesn't talk much. Just works. I think he's got kids.
Good guy.
Management rides him hard, though. Sterling watched Elias hustle from table to table, never slowing down, never snapping. A customer spilled a drink. Elias crouched down and cleaned it himself, even though a busser stood nearby playing on his phone. When a child started crying, Elias crouched and made the kid laugh, then brought out an extra scoop of ice cream on his own dime. Hey, Ryan, Elias called, gesturing to him. You shadowing me today? Sterling nodded, and for the next 4 hours, he followed Elias like a shadow. It was brutal. The manager barely checked in. Orders were backed up. One cook was missing. The busser disappeared for 20 minutes. Still, Elias kept moving. At one point, while they were restocking the soda machine, Sterling leaned in. You always do doubles like this? Elias gave a tired smile.
Yeah.
Gotta keep the lights on. My wife's out of work, and we've got 3 kids. It's not ideal, but it's what I can do. Sterling felt that hit.
Hard.
You ever ask for help? He asked. Elias shook his head quickly. Not my style. I work. That's how I help. Later, in the break room, Sterling overheard Jordan chewing out a teenage hostess for seating a party of 8 without checking first. You think we're running a charity? Jordan snapped. Next time you ask. You don't just seat people wherever. Sterling stepped in. She was trying to help. We had space. Jordan glared. You're new. Don't talk like you know how this place works. Sterling held his tongue, but inside, something twisted. This wasn't how his father ran things. It wasn't how he wanted things run either. That night, after the shift ended, Elias sat on a crate in the alley behind the restaurant, rubbing his feet. Sterling stood next to him, tossing a bottle cap between his hands. You ever think about quitting? Sterling asked. Elias chuckled. Every day. But then I remember my kids' faces. That's enough. He stood and stretched. All right. Back at it tomorrow. Another double. Good luck with training, man. Sterling watched him walk off into the dark, head low, feet dragging. He didn't suspect a thing. Sterling stayed behind, staring up at the restaurant's flickering sign. Something was broken here. And now that he'd really seen it, he wasn't going to let it stay that way. By the third day, Sterling felt the fatigue in his bones. He hadn't worked a floor in years, and even then it was during college summers, not 12-hour shifts with no support. Still, he kept his head down. The more invisible he stayed, the more truth he saw. He arrived just after sunrise, same as Elias, who was already rolling silverware at a table in the back. The man looked like he hadn't slept, eyes dark underneath and hands stiff as he moved. "Morning," Elias mumbled without looking up. Sterling pulled up a chair and started folding napkins beside him. "You ever get a day off?" Elias gave a half laugh, dry and quiet. "Last month. My youngest had a school play. Took half a day to see it, then came back for dinner rush." Sterling nodded, not pressing. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was the kind of quiet that came from people who'd been wrung out too many times to waste energy on small talk. By 9, the prep cook still hadn't shown. That sent the kitchen scrambling. Jordan barked orders from the expo line, while the one cook on duty, an older man named Luis, moved faster than anyone Sterling had seen in the back. But he was clearly overwhelmed. "Where's the prep guy?" Sterling asked, sliding a tray of toast onto the warmer. "Quit," Luis huffed, not looking up. Said he was tired of being treated like trash. No one replaced him. They just worked harder. At 10:30, the first customers walked in. Within an hour, the place was packed. Jordan stayed behind the host's stand, arms folded, while the servers darted between tables. Elias covered 2 full sections. Sterling followed, doing what he could, grabbing refills, dropping off checks, but he couldn't keep up. At one table, a woman in a wheelchair flagged Elias down. Her order had been wrong again. Elias leaned in, listened fully, and apologized without excuse. Then he went to the kitchen himself to fix it. Jordan noticed and walked over to Sterling. "He's too soft," she muttered. "Lets customers walk all over him." Sterling kept his expression neutral. He fixed the mistake. Jordan crossed her arms. "Doesn't matter. We don't have time for hand-holding." Efficiency, not babysitting. Sterling didn't respond. He didn't need to. The customer left smiling, and even left a $20 tip. Around 3, a delivery truck backed into the lot. The line cook was still in full swing, so Sterling offered to help unload. When he got outside, he found the driver arguing with the manager of the strip mall over a blocked loading zone. The driver, a woman in her 40s, gestured toward the restaurant door. "I told him last week this is for deliveries. But that manager keeps parking his car here." Sterling looked over. A black SUV with tinted windows sat squarely in the loading zone. The license plate matched the one Jordan got out of every morning. He walked back inside and found her checking receipts at the host stand. "You're blocking the delivery bay. They can't unload." She didn't look up. "Tell them to wait." "They've waited 15 minutes. Jordan sighed, loud and theatrical. "I'm not moving my car. It's not my fault she came during lunch rush. That's the scheduled delivery window." She snapped her receipt book shut. "Not my problem. You're new. Don't act like you know how things work." Sterling stared at her for a second, then walked back out and helped the driver carry in 20 crates by hand. Elias joined him halfway through, even though no one asked. Later, as they stacked boxes in the back, Elias whispered, "She's been like that since December. Doesn't lift a finger. If someone speaks up, they get stuck with the worst shifts." Sterling didn't reply. He didn't need to. The truth was stacking itself higher than the crates. By 5, the dinner rush was rolling in. A young hostess named Valerie, no older than 17, was working the front solo. Sterling saw her flipping through reservation note cards, flustered. A couple had walked in early, demanding their booth. Valerie tried to explain it wasn't ready yet, and that someone else was seated there. You're just saying that because of my husband, the woman said sharply, pulling her partner's arm. You people never give us decent service. Valerie's face went pale. Her eyes flicked over to the man tall, pale-skinned, arms covered in prison tattoos. The woman leaned in close enough to whisper something that Sterling couldn't hear, but he saw Valerie's expression freeze. Sterling stepped in, placing himself between them. She's doing her job, he said evenly. You'll be seated when your table is ready. The man moved like he wanted to say something, but Sterling didn't flinch. After a beat, they backed off and sat in the waiting area. Valerie turned to him, voice shaking. I didn't know what to do. You did fine. Jordan appeared moments later, having seen the last part of the exchange. What did you say to them? They were harassing her. Jordan looked at Valerie. You need thicker skin. If I had $1 for every time someone gave me attitude, Sterling cut in. They weren't giving attitude. They were threatening her. Jordan's jaw clenched, but she said nothing more and walked away. Elias found Sterling leaning against the counter 10 minutes later, rubbing his temple. You all right? Sterling nodded slowly. Just watching. You'll see a lot if you look long enough, Elias said. He said it not like a complaint, but a fact. Like gravity. The night wore on. One of the dishwashers quit mid-shift. Another server got screamed at by a customer and finished the shift in silence. Luis finally sat down at 10, hands trembling from the pace he'd kept all day. When they started mopping, Sterling saw Elias wince and clutch his ribs. You okay? Old injury. Just flares up sometimes. You need to get that looked at. Elias gave a dry chuckle. If I miss a shift, my rent misses a payment. Does management know? Doesn't matter. They just call me unreliable. Sterling didn't say anything. He just wrung out the mop and went back to work. At the end of the night, Jordan stood by the exit, sipping from a to-go cup. Make sure the floors are dry. Don't want another lawsuit, she said to no one in particular. As Elias walked past, she added, You're on breakfast tomorrow. Be here by 6. He paused. I asked for the morning off. My daughter's got a doctor's appointment. Jordan shrugged. We're short. Figured out. Sterling watched Elias nod slowly, then keep walking.
He didn't argue.
He didn't raise his voice. He just looked tired in a way that went deeper than sleep. Sterling waited until the place was empty, then stood in the center of the dining room, the hum of the fridge the only sound left. He'd seen enough. Tomorrow, everything would change. Sterling arrived before sunrise the next morning, parking in the far corner of the lot where the security cameras didn't reach. The inside lights were still off. No cars but his and Elias's. He sat in the quiet for a minute, letting the weight of the last 3 days settle on him fully. What he'd seen wasn't just a struggling restaurant. It was a workplace bleeding out under the neglect of bad leadership, where the few who cared were being crushed under the weight of those who didn't. By 7, the kitchen was already behind. Luis had to prep everything alone again. The delivery truck hadn't come because Jordan forgot to confirm the weekly order. None of the managers were in yet. Elias was already on his 4th table, having skipped breakfast to cover the floor. Sterling pulled on his apron and started helping bus tables. They were short again. The hostess had called out. No one was covering. He was wiping down a booth when he heard a conversation near the service bar. Man's been limping all morning, said one of the younger line cooks, glancing toward Elias. You see his ankle? He won't say anything, another replied. Bet he's scared he'll lose hours. Sterling approached quietly and leaned in. What happened? The younger cook shrugged. He slipped in the walk-in last night. Didn't tell nobody. Sterling walked straight into the back and found Elias crouched in dry storage, organizing cans. You fall yesterday? Elias looked up slowly. It's nothing. Tweaked it a bit. You can't be on your feet like that. I'm good. Just need to stay loose. If I sit, it tightens up. Sterling didn't argue, but he didn't walk away either. You can't carry this place alone. Elias gave a short breath through his nose. Someone's got to do it. Sterling stepped out into the hallway and pulled out his phone. He called the regional HR director directly. I need you here.
Today.
By noon. Bring the district policy binder, not the summary. And pull every write-up and complaint filed for the store in the last 6 months. He hung up before they could ask questions. By noon, the complaints were stacking up both on paper and in real time. A family had waited nearly 40 minutes for a table that should have taken 10. One of the new servers, barely trained, broke down in the walk-in after being double-sat 3 times in 20 minutes. Jordan finally arrived, coffee in hand and sunglasses still on. Rough morning, Sterling asked as she passed the server's station. She didn't look at him. It's always rough when people can't do their jobs. Sterling followed her into the office in the back. She was reviewing a labor schedule, barely glancing up. You forgot to file the food order. I've got 50 things to do. Someone else should have caught it. That's not how accountability works. Jordan finally looked up. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? Sterling didn't answer. He stepped out of the office and signaled toward the front. HR had just walked in. Together, they set up in the banquet room, away from the dining floor, and began pulling employees in one by one. 14 people were interviewed over the next 3 hours. What emerged was grim. Multiple workers described being denied schedule requests without reason. One hostess had quit after being called too slow-looking to work Friday nights. A dishwasher had been clocked out mid-shift by Jordan after asking for a second break during a double. Several workers described a culture where speaking up meant punishment, bad sections, hostile shifts, or being left off the schedule without explanation. When Elias came in, he hesitated at the door. You didn't do anything wrong, Sterling said calmly. Elias sat down, stiffly. What's this about? We're trying to understand what's been happening here. Elias looked at the HR director, then back at Sterling. You really want to know? Yes. Elias rubbed his palm against his knee, thinking. I've worked here almost 6 years. Since the old GM left, it's been downhill. People quit, no one replaces them. Jordan, she doesn't check in. Doesn't help. If you make noise, she cuts your hours or loads you up till you break.
He paused.
I got 3 kids. I don't have time to fight. I just work. That's the only thing I know how to do. Sterling leaned forward. Why didn't you report any of this? Elias hesitated. I tried.
Once.
Months ago. Got pulled into the office the next day and reminded that my schedule wasn't guaranteed. After that, I kept quiet. The HR rep was already scribbling notes. Sterling didn't need to. He'd heard enough. At 4:30, Jordan returned to the office. Sterling was waiting. He closed the door behind her. We're terminating your employment effective immediately, he said. She froze. What are you talking about? You've created a retaliatory environment, ignored safety protocols, failed to follow scheduling policy, and you've violated employee rights repeatedly. Her voice rose. You can't fire me. I've been running this place. You haven't been running it. You've been hiding in it. She looked between him and the HR rep, who now stood behind him. Who the hell are you anyway? Sterling took off his glasses and set them on the desk. My name is Sterling Hamilton. Jordan's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I own this company, he said, and I've spent the last 4 days watching you fail the people who kept it running. She tried to recover. Look, I didn't know if I'd known, that's the problem. You should have treated everyone like they mattered, regardless of who was watching. She left without another word. Sterling stepped out into the dining room. The afternoon lull had just begun. Elias was wiping down tables, limping slightly. Valerie was folding menus by the host stand. Luis leaned against the line, finally catching his breath. Sterling cleared his throat. Can I get everyone's attention? The room turned slowly toward him. My name is Sterling Hamilton. I own this company. I've been here the last few days under a different name. What I saw was unacceptable, and it's going to change. No one moved. I want to start by saying thank you to the people who've kept this place alive. You've worked through conditions no one should tolerate. That ends today. He looked at Elias. You're off the schedule for the next 4 days.
Paid.
Go see a doctor. Take care of your family. Elias blinked. You don't have to do that.
Ido.
And I will. He turned to Valerie. You're getting a raise. And we're assigning a second host during peak hours. To Luis. You're getting another prep cook by end of week. I already approved the hire. Then to the rest. Anyone who was retaliated against, come see HR. We're clearing schedules and starting from scratch. No more punishment shifts. No more silent mistreatment.
He paused.
I can't fix everything today, but I will fix this place. And I'll be back. Regularly. Not as someone hidden, but as someone present. There was no applause. No cheers. Just a silence that felt like something cracking open for the first time in years. As people drifted back to work, Elias walked over, slow and careful. You really didn't have to do all that. I did, Sterling said. Because you already did more than your share. Elias looked down, then nodded. All right. I'll be back after the doctor. And I'll bring coffee. Sterling smiled. This time, let someone else carry the load. Elias walked away, lighter somehow. Not fixed, not finished, but lighter. Sterling stayed behind, watching the floor move with a new rhythm.
It was going to take time.
But now, finally, it had started. 3 weeks later, Sterling pulled into the same parking lot, this time without any disguise. No hidden cameras. No fake name. Just himself. The early evening sun cast long shadows across the storefront. The sign above the doors had been cleaned and relit. Not a full transformation, but a beginning. Inside, the dinner rush was in full swing. The difference was immediate, not in the noise or the pace, but in the way people moved. Purposeful. Focused. And, above all, not afraid. Valerie stood behind the host stand, now flanked by a second host, a college student named Ray who had started 2 weeks ago. She didn't hesitate when a guest stepped in. Her voice was clear, confident, and steady. Elias wasn't on shift. Sterling had insisted he take the week to recover fully, and for once, the man had agreed. Today, he was likely at home with his kids. Sterling had made sure his full pay continued uninterrupted. Luis waved from the pass, now working beside a younger prep cook named Darnell. The two moved in sync, trading trays and chopping ingredients without needing to speak. The kitchen had stopped bleeding hours, and for the first time in months, it was actually running on schedule. Sterling moved toward the back, where the new interim manager, a woman named Rosa, was walking the floor. She had transferred from another location where she'd earned a reputation for fairness and straight talk. He watched her pause at each table, not hovering, just checking in. When a server looked overwhelmed, she stepped in without being asked. She spotted Sterling and walked over, her tone brisk but respectful. You're early, she said, glancing at her watch. Didn't want to wait, Sterling replied. How's it looking?
Better, she said.
It's not perfect. We're still short on weekends, and the dish station needs another hire. But morale's up. Nobody's walked off in over 10 days. I've had 2 former employees ask to come back. Good, Sterling said. Keep tracking everything. I want weekly reports from here until we've stabilized. She nodded and returned to the floor. In the small staff break room, Sterling had set up chairs in a circle. Not the usual training layout, this was a conversation, not a lecture. As employees filtered in, they looked unsure, but not hostile. He waited until everyone had arrived, then stood. I told you I'd be back, he said. Not to check boxes. To stay involved. He let that settle. I'm not here to talk about what went wrong. We did that already. You lived it. Some of you carried this place when no one else would. My job is to make sure you're never put in that position again. He gestured to a stack of folders on the table. These are your shift evaluations. Not just performance reviews, real feedback. From Rosa. From customers. From each other. You'll get them one-on-one. And you'll get a say in yours. Valerie raised her hand. Are these being used to cut hours? Or fire anyone? No, Sterling said. They're being used to promote. To reward. To put people where they belong. Luis leaned forward. We actually gonna get raises? You already are. Effective next pay cycle. Anyone who's worked over 2 years gets a pay bump. Anyone who's trained new hires gets a bonus. There was a pause. Then a few nods. No applause, just quiet processing. Sterling continued. I want to be clear about something. What happened before wasn't an accident. It was allowed. That's on leadership. That's on me. I won't let it happen again. Ray, the new host, spoke up. What about Jordan? Is she still with the company? No, Sterling said, evenly. She's not. There's no place here for intimidation or neglect. That's a line we don't cross. He paused. If anyone here sees something that doesn't sit right, whether it's a safety issue, a policy issue, or how someone's being treated, you come to Rosa. Or you come to me. Directly.
No filters. No delay.
A few employees exchanged glances. The kind of look that said maybe, just maybe, this time it would be different. After the meeting, Sterling stayed behind to help clear the room. Valerie lingered, folding her copy of the schedule. I didn't think you'd really come back, she said. I didn't think I'd have to, he answered. But I'm glad I did. She looked at him for a moment. You think it'll last? The changes? That depends on all of us, he said. But you're not alone anymore. That's the part that matters. She nodded and left without another word. Sterling walked the floor one more time before stepping outside. The air smelled like fried onions and cool spring wind. He sat on the bench near the dumpster, the same one where Elias had once rubbed his aching feet. That moment hadn't left him. He pulled out his phone and called Elias. Hey, came the voice on the other end, tired but warm. Just checking in, Sterling said. How's the ankle? Better. The brace helps. Wife says I'm not allowed to come back until Monday. Smart woman, Sterling said. You'll be stepping into a different place. Yeah. There was a pause. I meant what I said, Elias added. You didn't have to do any of this. I owed it to you. And to everyone else who kept showing up when no one else did. Elias didn't reply right away. All right, he said finally. Then I'll be there Monday. Just don't expect miracles. I don't, Sterling said. Just your usual. He hung up and sat for a while, watching the windows glow in the coming dusk. Inside, the staff moved through the dinner rush not effortlessly, but steadily. Together. The company wasn't fixed. Not yet, but it was moving again. The right way. And for the first time in a long time, Sterling wasn't watching from above. He was right there, where he needed to be,